So I sort of had this wonderful grace of being immediately here, seeing the fullness of the community and desiring to dive in as deep as I can with that.
Welcome to Vox Pauli, conversations with people past and present at St. Paul's Catholic Student Center at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Welcome, Sylvan Millevolte. Does your last name mean a million volts?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I think at one point it was changed. Previously, it had meant 1,000 thanks.
Oh.
So I'm not sure what the pronunciation of the spelling was. But yeah.
1,000 thanks. All right. Now, you are a junior here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, yes?
Correct.
And what do you study?
I study finance in the School of Business.
Now, is it finance or finance?
I say finance.
Okay.
I've heard people say finance. And
I feel like someone who's going to make a lot of money would say finance.
oh, really?
Well, I don't know. You should check this out. The School of Finance.
Finance.
All right, so you study the making of money.
Yes, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Why?
You know, I came into the university undecided. So I applied to Madison undecided, came in freshman year not knowing what I wanted to do. I always had an aptitude for the sciences and the math. I loved chemistry, biology, physics, and calculus.
Love them and were naturally good at them.
I was really good at them. Still, I guess, still am.
That's good, yes.
But I came in, took physics, just sort of on a whim, not really knowing if I wanted to do physics. Crushed it, but didn't love the process.
Right.
The sort of same thing happened back in high school. I took like an engineering class. Didn't love the process of it.
Could do well.
Was I good at it?
Enjoy
yeah.
it.
But it didn't bring me peace in a sense. So then thought about options because at some point you got to decide, like I got to have a trajectory. My brother was very adamant that the business school is a good option. Now, again, I wanted to use what I was good at and something like marketing and the softer sides of the business, not quite where I would be well applied. So the obvious answer was finance.
Or finance, yeah.
They tend to use a lot of math, and I think I'm finally getting to that point in the studying where it's focused enough to be, I might be challenged a little bit here.
Fun.
Yeah.
That sounds very fun.
Yeah.
Now, where do you come from?
I come from Heartland, Wisconsin.
Oh, from beautiful Milwaukee land.
Yes, about 60 miles east of here.
Uh-huh. And many brothers and sisters, a few brothers and sisters. What's your family like?
One older brother.
One older brother who went to school here.
Correct.
And is a somewhat famous man.
Sure. Yeah.
We'll say that. Right.
Yeah, he just graduated.
Married a lovely lady.
Yep.
Thanks. So, is he still living in the city?
He's living near Lake Wabisa.
Oh,
they have a little house over there.
You get to see him?
Every once in a while.
That's nice.
I was supposed to go ice fishing with him today, but that didn't quite work out.
Man, that's a terrible guy. So you apply, like you always wanted to go to U-Madison, or your brother was here, or it's like what a Wisconsin kid does, or what was that like?
Now, there's a little bit of that, all that which he said, but it was also the fact that I visited, specifically St. Paul's, my senior year. I went to a Newman dinner and was received with open arms by people that I didn't know. There was something weird to that.
There's some magic in the air about that.
I felt like I was with my parents too. And now thinking about that, being a student, it's like, who's that guy? But everybody was so welcoming. Basil was a hospie. That's my brother's name, Basil. And all of the hospies, when I walked in the kitchen, they sang some random song for me that somehow had my name in it. To this day, I don't know what that song was.
That's fantastic.
But I felt something was different about the community. And that drew me into at least more definitely consider the university. Eventually, it became a very practical thing too. 60 minutes away.
That's true.
And state tuition. And my brother's here. Plus, there's this sick community that is already waiting for me to arrive. Should I apply and make it in?
That's awesome.
So it was a combination of a lot of things, but I ended up only applying to here in Minnesota when it came to it.
Oh, explain that.
Well, See,
You're in Minnesota.
yeah, that's it.
Is this reciprocity, or it's like, no, I could wear those hideous colors?
It was sort of, I didn't want to get yelled at by only applying to one school.
Right.
So I threw that one in there in the Common App just because it took maybe an extra paragraph. I had no desire of going there.
Right. Thank God.
I know. And I figured I'd get in here. If not, we would have had to reconsider some stuff. But I felt pretty strongly about my application and my grades and such. So
Did you go to the famous Heartland Arrowhead High School?
I sure did.
It seems like a legendary place. Is it legendary?
It has
like
a
when you
name
grew up
to
around
it.
Wisconsin, it's like Heartland Arrowhead, and they're always winning football and whatnot. Is it like that in person?
There's a lot of lore to it. In person, it's a lot less glorious.
Well, that's always true, isn't it?
But around here, you mentioned the name, and anybody that knows it thinks, oh, we hate them sports. But also, like,
All the Marquette High is like, "Mm."
so you get a lot of that over here. But it's kind of fun because they know the school. It's like, where are you from? Heartland. I went to Arrowhead. Oh, yeah, we hate you.
hate those guys.
It's like, yeah, but you don't go to high school anymore, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, what is that about things? Like, yeah, you went to high school there, grr, but not really because we're still friends. We all
Totally.
just-
And it's not like I played football or basketball or anything like that. I was
Just weird tribalism, you suppose.
I guess.
So
It's okay.
So you come here. Did you get right involved in like freshman interest groups or all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, at least as St. Paul's you're speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
You're right. I should clarify. First year groups at St. Paul's versus freshman interest groups on the. Did you get into any interest groups on campus?
No, because I was so undecided. I had no idea.
Yeah. Good point. What do you?
But yeah, immediately I was in and I was trying to learn all the things I could.
Who were
Whether
your
that was
FIG leaders?
My FIG leaders were Joe and Ashley.
Joe and Ashley.
How wonderful.
Isn't that? They're going to get married.
They are. They're in marriage prep in the other room right now.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well done.
So that was fun to watch develop. I'm now living with Joe. So
is that
I
right?
know him pretty well.
Awesome.
But seeing that relationship form through that was great. But yeah, got involved very immediately, which was incredible. Met a bunch of cool people.
Yeah, so talk about benefits of getting involved quickly, directly. Like, what are the things that you're really grateful for that you... Now, again, you had you had a brother who was here. You had met the community before here, but like benefits of diving right in from the beginning, what would you say?
In short, I didn't get lost in the worldly things. It was never a big concern of mine that large habits of sin would come up or anything like that once I got to Madison, the sort of king of the secular universities in the area.
Right, secular party school.
Totally, yeah. That wasn't totally the concern, but rather I could totally see it going the direction of maybe just kind of lonely and not really enjoying the experience of college. So I sort of had this wonderful grace of being immediately here, seeing the fullness of the community and desiring to dive in as deep as I can with that.
And you're raised in the faith.
I was.
And you have the kind of parents who bring you to the Newman Center when they're... So talk a little bit about what was growing up in your house like, not like but like, especially in the spiritual way. What are some of the really things you're particularly grateful to your mom and dad for and how they modeled when you were young?
Yeah, this is a very important thing. I think about it a lot because my desire now is to be a parent at some point. I think that would be amazing. And I've learned so much from them. They had a certain gift of being able to teach us virtue naturally without one explicitly saying it's virtue and without saying this is tied to the church and that's why we do it.
Okay.
I don't think those two pieces are necessary in raising children. And I think it works very well if that's not how you approach it.
Living virtue without saying, I'm being virtuous now. Just modeling it well.
Yeah,
And even though your parents are religious,
they are.
so it's motivated by their faith, but they don't say, we're doing this because the religion tells us to.
Because then it could be attached to, no, I didn't want to go to church on Sunday because I was a kid.
Yeah.
And if living this way was attached to that, well, shoot, I don't want to do that either. The way they did it was so particular. They sort of just spoke the things that were to be done without a question of it being another way. I think it's such a particular way to do things, to lead people. And I think this applies to not just parents, but other leadership things that I use now. if it were the case of, are we going to Sunday Mass or not? Yeah, we're going to Sunday Mass. There is no or not. It's not a matter of, but I want to do this thing on Sunday, or I want to sleep in. That was never an option.
That's not part of the consideration, and it's not it's not a dictated exclusion. We're going to Mass, not sleeping in. It's just
we're going to Mass.
What we're doing
Exactly.
And mom and dad clearly have affection for it, or a sentiment for it, however you want to say that. They're motivated to do it, and so you just follow from when you're little.
100%. And other ways that they could apply would be very big in my household. My mom grew up a farmer, so it's a lot of do-it-yourself type of thing. And that applies a lot with the kind of food that we eat. It's we're going to make our own food because we can, and it's cheaper, and it's going to be better. So if I were to come with her with a request of, on the way home, can we get fast food? No.
What about Culver's?
Maybe ice cream after dinner.
Oh, that's okay.
But just seeing that practically, of course. Sure. Yeah, we have the food. It's more expensive to do the other, and we're not totally rich, so why would we do this just out of desire? And she would never go through that sort of schematic in the car, but it would just be in her firmness of the answer that I saw. Yeah, I know she's not shaking on this, but I kind of
there's nothing to argue here. They declared it. Now, these other things about economics and health, did you just figure it out, or just as you get older, you ask more questions and your parents unveil it to you? How did that go?
More things are revealed the older we got, for sure. They respect us enough to give us the independence, might not be the right word, but the authority to see those things. They desire that we learn to grow up as they do, and in the right ways. Obviously, they're not perfect, but they were very good at doing that. And not faltering on withholding information to the extent that they're trying to overprotect us, because I can see that being the case in a lot of families where the parents don't trust the kids with anything. My parents were, that's another aspect that we can get into, the trust of us. But right now, for the information's sake, as we got older, they realize they deserve a reason because they're smart enough to also come to that conclusion once given the information. As a kid, it's like the faith of children as described in the spiritual life. You do what you're told, not because you understand it, but because you trust in your Heavenly Father. And that couldn't be more clear with parents and their children too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't touch the stove. That's the obvious example because your parents say. As a 3-year-old, you don't know it's because it's hot.
You trust that your parents are guiding you in the right way.
When you get old enough, they'll tell you why so that you can apply it in other aspects. But when you're 3, your parents are always with you.
Yep. And that's the art form of parenting, when we start to grant children legitimate freedom to question and explore and figure out, so that it becomes something that's in your own mind, right? That the trust you build on is now in your own mind intellectually, it would seem. Now, you also seem to have that with music and dance and whatnot. Was that trained in your house, brought in your home, or you just kind of, you had a knack for it and you learned it in school, and how'd that go?
Yeah, the music was very in the home, for sure. My dad originally went to USC for classical guitar performance.
The University of Southern California?
Correct.
USC?
Yes.
For classical guitar?
He did.
That's fantastic.
It was on a full ride, so that was the only way it would happen.
Your dad got a full ride scholarship to Southern Cal to study classical guitar before.
Indeed.
That's awesome.
So that was sort of okay, it's clear that the music is there, but he, as a job now, he's a sound engineer, so he records musicians. So along the years, he picks up different instruments too, whether it's the drum set or the electric bass or anything like that. He played trumpet in college too, I think. So the instruments were always in the house. And being the sort of granola wholesome family that we were, it was, don't be on the TV, put some drumsticks in this kid's hands. So I would just sort of sound bad until it sounded kind of good for many years on the drums, till I sort of have that ability now. As I got even older, they encourage the joining of the school band too. So learn to play flute in that. The knack is definitely genetic for it. The desire, the enjoyment of it, very genetic, but also the sort of learned, it's not that bad if you give it time. It's not that hard.
Right. It becomes familiar. It's accessible.
So then the next one is a little easier.
So you've got a classical guitar playing father, and you come from a granola family, and you're in the School of Business, which has a certain, can we call it reputation? Mm-hmm. How do those two things go together?
It's fun.
I believe that.
It is very fun. I sort of, maybe this is I don't want to say prideful, but a little bit upright of me to say I see things weirdly in the business school.
I believe you do,
From an outside, this is hilarious perspective in a lot of cases. This sort of, I care about this spreadsheet and this presentation. When in reality, they're just like schmoozing the guy to get the job or get the good grade. I'm sitting there thinking, these guys don't care nothing about the spreadsheets. Maybe eventually they enjoy the trade, whatever they're doing.
The spreadsheet has to be correct.
Right. But
that's not they can find a ton of guys that can do a correct spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Is it like, I like this guy, I trust this guy? Is that what you're saying?
Sort of, yeah. Like the winning overness of the business school culture is just, it's just hilarious. And I'm gonna do the thing and play the part when I need to, but that's not how I was raised, which is great.
So, but you don't find there's not congruence there. Is there conflict there?
I wouldn't say conflict, just because it is such a superficial thing. I don't have to I'm not changing my lifestyle to acclimate to the business school culture. I think that's very important because the companies that I'm going to want to work for aren't going to want to hire the guy that's acting. I'm going to genuinely enjoy the math, enjoy the process, and he's going to hire me because he's got a good heart. Like he likes this, and he's going to do good work for me because he trusts me.
So are you looking at certain kind of companies or places, or have you not yet begun that process?
I've begun that process, definitely. I'm just a junior, so it's not full-time yet. Well, sort of hoping to talk to some people about that later on. But
you found some places that could be a place.
Attractive, yeah.
That's very exciting. And you want to be a dad one day.
That would be awesome.
All right. Yeah. Talk about your views on dating and approaching young women and so forth. Do you have any what are your views? It's not that hard. It's a little intimidating. Let's talk about dating culture. It's much chit-chatted about. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you have any views on this topic, Sylvan?
Oh, I've spent many an hour talking to people about this very intentionally, in the sense that we need to look at what the culture is. Is it good or bad? Should something be done to change it? And these conversations end up coming to the conclusion of maybe it's not ideal. What is the solution? We just need to be more friendly towards the opposite gender.
Friendship.
That's
the key.
And I think that's been thrown around a lot, even in just the recent weeks. That's something I've been talking about for months with people. Just this idea that, okay, we say the bar is too high for entry, but the bar is so high because
people do say that.
Opposing fronts, and we're two sides fighting a war against each other. Of course, the one dude isn't going to approach the other side. And that's the fault of both sides, probably more the guys. No more the guys for sure, because they are to lead in this circumstance. But so that seems to be a brokenness to it.
So do you have any suggestions on how men and women can be friends?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is it
many?
Well, can you say a few?
Sure. Yeah. The first one would just to be approach. I'm going to speak from the guys because I think this is something that has to come from them. And in most cases, approach the women in your life with a genuine interest in who they are.
Yeah, that's awesome.
With very basic questions.
Yep.
How are you today? And then listen to the answer and realize that the things they have to say will probably be interesting you're going to find that you enjoy the conversation.
So are you arguing that they will naturally find them interesting, or make the resolution out of respect for that person? I'm going to hear what they say. And even if initially I don't find it interesting, I respect them, so I get into it. And then
more that, definitely that there's a sentiment that guys should have a certain, as you say, respect, or I like using reverence around women.
We have used that word.
Because I love the phrase feminine genius, just being aware that that exists and it is so untapped and unobserved from the male perspective, especially in this community. And just asking enough questions will, one, gain the trust so that you can hear a little more than just, how are you today? But to where that question becomes, how was that event that might not have affected you in the best way? Like, how are you feeling about that? Can I support you in any way? Then it becomes this relationship where we are two different people with very different perspectives, and we desire to both use those perspectives for the betterment of each other. And that can't happen in the same way it does between male and female, as we're so desperately trying to make happen between just male and male.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, absolutely. We're putting a lot of intentionality. Do this, guys to guys, girls to girls. We have less intentionality, guys to girls. Would you argue that perhaps one thing that's difficult is guys can do this easily with other guys one-on-one and girls with girls one-on-one, but in the beginning stages, guys and girls have to do this perhaps in groups, maybe smaller groups, or do you feel, no, a guy can just go up to a girl and chat her up, and that's not signaling anything, that's just being friendly?
It shouldn't signal anything.
Okay.
And I believe that's where a lot of the I'll say issues can come up.
Yeah.
The brokenness,
confusions,
perchance.
It hurts, yeah, for sure.
So I don't think it should be a matter of, okay, we gotta get these groups of guys to go up, these groups of women. Maybe that'd be easier, but ultimately, if the whole of the culture shifts to where, all right, I'm just a guy, that girl is not talking to anybody. Maybe I desire to get to know her. Great. That's all it has to be. And that has no inkling towards discerning a relationship or a vocation with them, maybe a relationship of friendship. But the overwhelming sentiment is that it does mean something. So we have to be aware of that too. And
perhaps if we might say this might be too grandiose, but the rule of charity would say, I'm talking to this other person, I'm a guy talking to a girl, I'm talking to a guy, not because I have a romantic self-interest, but it's in the first place, it's the rule of charity. I'm trying to be their friend. Mm. That may turn into a romantic self-interest, sure, and that's fine, but that's not what it means at its initial.
Yeah, and that's how it's received, unfortunately, in a lot of cases.
Well, because here's kind of the darnable thing. Like, what if you see a girl and you haven't talked before and you're just like, I am interested. Now, would you argue the rule of charity supersedes your romantic interest because you haven't really talked to them before, you don't know them that well, or it's the proverbial, because here's what I think we get into these weird colloquialisms, shoot your shot, that kind of thing. Like, oh, I should signal this right away. Like, how do you feel about that?
I think it gets, it's sort of the one-off case where it actually gets talked about. That's sort of, oh, now I actually do desire to shoot my shot. Mm-hmm. When it should just be talked about more often. I think that's sort of the confusion between why are all of these interactions that we see between men and women one-on-one feeling like they're more than that. Mm-hmm. Well, it's because we only talk about it when it does have that weight of, okay, it might be more than just this.
We like charity. Groups of friends or the way, like, we don't say, I had this really interesting conversation with Sally Mae, and she studies this, and she had a really successful doing X, Y, or Z.
Mm-hmm. That would dilute the pot.
Right. Instead we say, I want to, and this whole thing.
Yeah, the sort of broiness of, they seem to only talk about it when it has that romantic thing with it. I talked to Allie Eichmann very extensively about this topic, and that was part of our analysis, where if we dilute that sort of observation, if we have like this beaker of observation where the solution is the intensity of how often we think about these interactions as romantic, if we dilute that pot with more non-romantic interactions and conversations about those interactions, then all of a sudden it's not assumed to be that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And that it's just not happening, which is, it's okay.
And the way to make it happen is to start doing it.
Those that are comfortable. That was the resolution we made. Allie and I, was, all right, and morning coffee, that's going to be my goal. I'm going to start. Maybe people will follow by example. Because if I'm talking to maybe a group of women, that doesn't bother me. But maybe somebody who's younger and knows me might join that circle and then get to know their names.
And I think you made an important thing. People who have that confidence, who are perhaps a little more established, it is important we show by example, because you might be someone younger or newer. Mm-hmm. You're not culturally taught this.
Exactly.
Maybe you didn't learn it in your human experience. Well, how can I expect you to not be intimidated by it or to do differently? No, I need to model it more broadly.
Yeah, and I will say I sort of unlearned this when I entered the St. Paul's community, mm-hmm. in a very sad way, I must say, where it was called out to me pretty immediately that I was talking to women. And I don't want to be accusatory or anything, but this is something that happened and sort of shifted me away from that way of socializing. There was no differentiation in my mind of I'm going to talk to only the guys because, bro code or whatever. It was sort of more like whoever's in front of me, I just want to get to know them.
Yeah.
And that was pretty initially received. Are you interested in her? Mm-hmm. What?
No, man.
Like, dude, come on. So I sort of unlearned that. Like, I guess I got to prioritize the guys. That's where I'm supposed to be using my time. Great. I took that as like dogma almost, doctrine rather. And now I'm sort of doing the opposite and hoping that
trying to even it out.
Exactly. And be the one who sets the example that would have otherwise not made me unlearn it for those that are younger. Be the one who sort of sets the tone again so that it doesn't send people who may have already been comfortable with this. But you can't blame all the freshmen who are coming in and seeing it as it is and saying to themselves, this is how it should be.
This is how I should do it. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, no.
That's not different at all. Well, Sylvan, thank you. Yes. I feel like we could talk a bit more about this. However, it's been nice to talk to you.
You as well.
Today.
Yeah.
Right. Any parting word for the people?
Guys, talk to some women in not a weird way. Just get a friend, ask them questions and learn from their experiences.
Amen. Yeah. Thank you, Sylvan. Thank you. See you next time. Bye-bye.